All right, let's review a little bit. Let's see who remembers anything. It's always scary, especially those who were gone last class period. Let's see what you remember. All right, somebody tell me how the first financial power, the first one listed in Section 8, how that one has been abused by liberals to expand the things that the federal government's allowed to do.
The tax was only meant to pay off the bills, like pay off debts, and they use it as two separate powers instead of just one power.
Okay, and it's not so much the debt part that's the issue.
It's the tax.
It's what phrase do they twist?
Common welfare.
Yeah, the general welfare. Right, that is a restriction on what they can spend money on, and they take it as a completely separate power. All right, Congress is not allowed to just provide anything that they think is good for us. Right, that's the way the Supreme Court has decided it is, but that is not what it says. So, all right, so that has been used. Where's another place in that listing of powers that things that Congress can do that we've seen abuse and liberals using it to expand the things the federal government can do? I don't know. I think they've done pretty good. Yes.
Regulating commerce between the states.
Okay, interstate commerce. Yeah, regulating commerce between the states. And the final definition by about 1940, any human activity or other phenomena that has any ultimate impact on activities in more than one state. So, a snowball fight at the state line is subject to regulation by Congress by that definition. It's hard to come up with something that can't be in some way construed as having an ultimate impact on activities in more than one state. Not an immediate impact, just somehow down the road it might have an impact in more than one state. So anyway, it is turned it into just a general regulatory power. They regulate anything they want, anywhere, under the guise of interstate commerce, which was not the intention. It's not what it's saying, but it has been abused drastically. The gun control example is a funny one with that. Funny, a sad one. The gun-free school zones. I think I gave you the example of the hotel in Alabama, or the courts ruled that they were subject to regulation by Congress because people might come from out of state to stay there. So anyway, it just completely twisted all the meaning there for that one. I think that's as far as we got. All right, to remind us of what we were doing here, Section 8 of Article 1 is a listing of things Congress can do. It starts off, the Congress shall have power to. And we see all down through there a semicolon and then another power listed. Before each of those powers, you could put there very justly, the Congress shall have power to. The second one is borrow money on the credit of the United States. And so on. And for this particular section, we're not going straight through it. We're grouping them by powers that kind of go together. The first grouping was financial powers, taxing, borrowing, coining money, and then punishing counterfeiting. Then was commercial powers, that was the interstate commerce, post offices, post roads, and patents and copyright laws. All of that is under the regulation of Congress. So the next cluster of powers is defense and military powers. Defense and military powers. This one starts with number 11. So you have to, for me, flip the page. Oh, there we are. All right, first one there is to declare war. The Congress shall have power to declare war. So who decides if we go to war? Very good. Congress decides, right? The president cannot arbitrarily decide to go to war. The official declaration of war has to come from Congress. All right, we have that stated here very, very clearly. There is a legitimate, let me back up here. We've not been declaring war recently, officially. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these places have not been officially declarations of war. all right, which I think is a big mistake. If we're going to go to war, let's go to war, okay? Congress, there's a little bit of my reading into it, they're a little bit hesitant to do this because as soon as they declare war, the president as commander-in-chief has a lot of power, and they are not able to nitpick and that looked like a glance about something completely unrelated to class. I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, I agree, President Obama. So they don't want to declare war because then it throws a lot of the control to the president. If you were old enough and paid attention to the war in Iraq, how old were you guys when we invaded Iraq? 12? 13.
I was 2003.
No, back under, was it 13? Okay, so you should pay attention. I'm sure in 7th grade I was paying attention. So anyway, when Bush invaded Iraq, we don't want to rehash the whole thing, but there was no declaration of war, so it left Congress here in the middle of the fighting, changing the rules, changing the rules of engagement. When could our soldiers fire? When could they not fire? They're investigating prison camps, that Abu Ghraib stuff, all of that is Congress here meddling in the middle of the war, which is a dangerous thing. All right. So anyway, I really think we make a mistake here not declaring war, and I think Congress is very hesitant to do it because it does throw a lot of the authority to the president. He is the commander-in-chief. It really is designed so that when we get to war, he's in charge. This war by committee that's not very good. It doesn't work for running health care or anything. It doesn't work for war. So anyway, declare war. That it comes from Congress. They've got to officially do it, and we've not done it very much recently. We've not done it tons of times ever, but not recently especially. All right, there is a question here that beyond that comes up of how far does the president's power as commander-in-chief extend, and where does this power to declare war? Like, just last night or this morning I heard about one of our special operations soldiers getting killed in Afghanistan or Iraq? Is it Afghanistan? Iraq? I can't remember which one now. The president sent these guys to help some of the nationalist forces there, and one of our guys got killed. Is that war? Or can a president, as the commander-in-chief, do that with their military? So there is some legitimate kind of this gray area of how much latitude does the president have as commander-in-chief, and where does Congress's power here to declare war step in? Where do those two meet? All right, so we can flesh it out a little bit once we get to the president, but the basic thought is now. The basic law from Congress is the president has 60 days if he wants to, send troops into some place. If it stays within that 60-day time frame, it's his prerogative as the commander-in-chief. If it goes beyond that, then we need regulations and authority from Congress. So there's some legitimate gray area there in that. So, questions about declarations of war? I need to separate you guys even further.
Nobody has to initiate whether or not they should vote on going to war, right? Congress can do
Yeah, either side can initiate that. Yeah. Yeah.
Would that require 2/3, or would it be like any other law?
Just any other thing.
51%?
Yeah, just more than 50. Yep. So, FDR at Pearl Harbor, that was Sunday. Monday, they had a special session of Congress to get this declaration of war. He could not just by himself fight the Japanese. That would be fun.
What kind of position does it put us in by not officially declaring war as to if Congress would have decided that?
It puts us in a position where the commander-in-chief is always getting second-guessed by Congress. And we have, and then the commanders are stuck. Do we obey the president and get called before Congress? It just makes it very awkward. Imagine, I don't know if you worked at McDonald's or something, and there are two bosses, and both of them claim an authority, and no matter what you did, one of them's going to be mad at you. It puts our soldiers in that position potentially. So in time of war, that's a very bad place to be. It's bad enough at work, but when you're getting shot at and might die, we don't need that. So I'm not saying that Congress should just routinely declare war, but in Vietnam and some of those places where we were committed for years and had 500,000 troops there, let's declare war. And a big reason why that was such a mess was Congress meddling, beyond the fact that we had liberals running it and other things. So. Okay, so declaration of war. Let's go on with this. It continues on the same basic power. We see a comma. Congress has power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal. What in the world is that? Is that some forerunner of the Grand Marquis? Registration and paperwork? Anybody know what those deal with? Well, somebody would.
Treaty?
No, that's a good thought, but that's not it. At least not directly. It has to do with privateers. All right? Megan was right there. You should have answered. You looked, you impressed us. All right, so Congress here, they can authorize privateers, and reprisal, that would be, if they capture an enemy ship, what happens? Do the privateers get to sell and keep all the money? Do we split it? Do we do a, on the dock, all the sailors on the privateer ship, they draw straws, and whoever gets a short straw gets all, what happens to the stuff? I don't know what it was for us, but under the British, I think it was the crew, the ship got half, and the English government got half, and then the captain got half of the half, so it got a quarter. So imagine catching a ship full of cargo worth several $1 million, and the captain's personal cut is a quarter of that. It's not too bad. Okay. Of course, you might get killed, but if you manage to live, it's a good deal. And then the other quarter was left for the crew. They got to split that up, usually based upon rank and other things. But anyway, that's the reprisal. How do we, whatever's captured, how do we split that up? So anyway, it's up to Congress to decide that again. The president can't arbitrarily just begin hiring privateers. It puts it under control of Congress. So, and then the last part, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. Okay, same idea there. If we capture, this would be more than just privateers capturing enemy vessels, that type of thing. What do we do with them? Oh, for what it's worth here, privateers were declared, were forbidden by international law in 1856. The Declaration of Paris. Don't we all feel safer? So,
Yeah.
think of the excitement. You've got a fishing boat and it's time for war. And,
So I guess Somalia didn't get the memo about that?
yeah, they didn't get the memo. We're the only ones that are stupid enough to really listen to these things. Our enemies do not, right? But we do. We will, another power, it is, just to give the number 14 is to make rules for the government and regulation of land and naval forces. This is the power that Congress has involved in the military. They make the rules of engagement and all that kind of stuff, which is appropriate. I mean, we do have a civilian-run military. We don't have the generals arbitrarily doing what they want. But sometimes we make stupid rules, and one of them is we listen to these things. All right. It's illegal by international law to use hollow point bullets in war. Okay, if you've ever been hunting or shooting or much, because it's much more likely to maim somebody for life as a solid bullet. It'll just put them out of action and they'll recover. I want to kill them. It doesn't matter. But it's illegal to use hollow point bullets. It's just completely. You got to use full metal jacket. It's illegal to target. It's illegal to target personnel with anything with 50 caliber or larger. So if you have a 50 caliber machine gun, you can't shoot people. Now, I've talked to multiple soldiers who say they don't ever target people, but they'll shoot at their buttons because that's equipment. But sometimes we make stupid rules and we laugh at them and shake our heads and discuss like why we do that. So the one about hollow points, that's an international convention. Just think of the absurdity. Here we're at war, we're dropping daisy cutters on them and all these beautiful bombs that we have, and we're going to make ourselves use full metal jacket. It's insane. But anyway, the point is, Congress is the one ultimately to make those rules. The president can't arbitrarily make the rules of engagement. It goes to Congress. So, what was my point? I'm skipping ahead. We do want to have Congress here able to rein in the military. We don't want a runaway military, and that's what we've seen other times, other countries in history. So this keeps it under the control of Congress, but does provide here with this declaration of war a little bit of a balance where we actually, when we need a commander-in-chief to run a war without everybody squabbling and fighting, he can run away with it. So, all right, we jumped ahead. Make rules. That was number 14. We got to do number 12. Here it said the Congress have power to raise and support armies. All right, so it's up to Congress to do that. The president. It'd be fun to see the president out. Making a commercial, join the army, fight under me. That's exactly it. We see people fleeing, but it's up to Congress to do that. The Congress decides how many soldiers we're going to have, how many units, all of that. It's up to Congress to decide, not the president to arbitrarily decide those things. And then the next part here, can anybody think why this is? It continues that same thought. But no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a term longer than 2 years. Why would they have that? Why pick out this funding of the military and limit that to 2 years? No more than 2 years.
If somebody gets too much control, then it becomes a military dictatorship.
Okay, that's true. It's to help prevent that. Right?
Every 2 years there's an election of some sort, so it keeps it constant, so it can be revised.
Okay, that is very true. The House is elected every 2 years, so it forces every new House to appropriate money for the military, so it keeps it directly in the hands of the people that way. That's true. I mean, that's a very important facet of it. What does this force the president and the military? How do I say that? It forces the military to stay under the control of Congress. Congress today can't fund the military for the next 10 years, and then our generals and everybody says, oh, we're funded for 10 years, and just run away and do what they want. Every 2 years, at the very longest, this goes back to Congress. And by saying the appropriation can't be for more than 2 years, if there's a deadlock in Congress and they can't decide what happens, then there's no money spent. If you understand the difference, it's not that. If after 2 years the Democrats and Republicans are fighting and they can't decide what to happen, one thinks the military is too big, the other thinks it's too small, and they can't come to a compromise, then there's no money spent at all. Right? So it forces Congress to handle this thing at least every 2 years, partly because we have new representatives of the people there, and partly to help keep the military under the control of Congress, where we want a civilian-controlled military.
Didn't Obama just veto the latest defense spending bill? Like just the other night?
Oh,
They
I didn't.
passed it and he took it and vetoed it.
I
Because he
didn't.
wanted to chastise the Republicans, essentially, so that was his reason.
I hadn't heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Surprisingly manly for him.
He was angry because we didn't increase domestic spending too. He wanted us to increase both.
Yeah. So I haven't heard that, but maybe I'm getting cynical. I don't pay attention as much as I used to because it just irritates me. So, okay. So here, military spending, Congress decides it, and at the most every 2 years, it's got to be redecided by Congress. They can't do something like Congress has done for their pay, where it's just automatically increased based upon inflation or whatever thing that, where it just automatically goes up. Every 2 years, they've got to deal with it. So it's to prevent that type of thing. So, all right, number 13, to provide and maintain a navy. You guys know the old joke about the Marines? That they're just a department of the Navy?
The men's department.
The men's department? Yeah. So technically, the Marines are part of the Navy. They're a branch of the Navy. Obviously, they've expanded and do much more than that, but the original, they were the guys in the rigging shooting at the enemy ships. So, all right, so the point here is not to dissect where the Marines fall in this, but our military is under the control of Congress. They're the ones that decide how big, how many, how much, all of that. The president can't arbitrarily do that. All right, and then let's drop. We did number 14, so we got 15 and 16 in their order of things here. To provide for calling forth the militia, to execute the laws of the nation, suppress insurrection, and repel invasions. So what is our term for the militia today? National Guard. Let's talk about the National Guard. Congress can call them out. The president, again, can arbitrarily do it. The Supreme Court can't. Congress here provides for them being called out. When they're going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, they'll be used to patrol the border, or, I don't know, there's some sort of revolt in Chicago. Should we just let them burn the city down? But anyway, if they're going to get called into service by the national government, Congress here regulates how that is going to be done. They're directly under the control of the state governments, but if they're going to get pulled into the national, Congress does that. And then number 16 piggybacks on that a little bit, to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. Okay, so they provide some supervision there for this National Guard, how they operate, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. So when Congress provides some oversight and some guidance when they're under the control of the state government, under control of the governor, organizing, arming, and disciplining. So so we have some consistency. And then if they get called into service by the United States, they fall directly under the control of Congress. Can anybody think why we need to explicitly state who they're under, who's in charge of them? Why do we not want it to be ambiguous if they have to listen to the governor or have to listen to Congress and the president?
Because the governor and Congress won't always agree.
Yeah, they might want to go different directions. Again, very likely we'll want to go different directions. So it removes that question. If they get called into service for the national government, they're under the control of the national government. So to remove that question. Okay, then we see a clause or clarification a little bit here. Reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. Okay, so Congress provides this oversight, some rules and regulations directly in charge when they're put in service, but the states pick the officers and they actually do the training. They have to follow the guidelines and whatnot from Congress, but they actually organize it and run it. So, militia, National Guard. Should we do jumping jacks or something to... Go ahead. You have permission. But you have to come up here, just so you get in the camera. All right, defense and military powers. Next swath of these, political powers. And here I just have these listed with no explanation whatsoever. So hopefully we can go through this pretty easily. All right, the first political power is actually number 4 in the list. To establish an uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. So two things here that kind of go together, or at least they put them together. Congress decides the rules about naturalization. What is that? Is that what we've done to all of our food in the public school system? We made it all natural? That way all the kids leave campus and go to McDonald's. Yeah, becoming a citizen, the process of a foreigner becoming a citizen. This is controlled by Congress. The states can't do it, the governors can't do it, the president can't say, hey, I like you people, become citizens. Congress controls that. Unless the Congress came up with a rule that the president can arbitrarily pick, but they would have to decide that. All right, so uniform rule. So it's the same all throughout the country. That's pretty straightforward. We will discuss that a little bit more second semester about what actually our current policy is We'll say that for next semester, but it's up to Congress to decide that. Then the second half, uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. It might seem strange. Why in the world would this be something, if you think of the things that Congress has given, why pick out bankruptcies? Why this one topic? So can we think why it'd be appropriate to have the bankruptcy laws consistent throughout the whole country? Bankruptcy, it gets abused a lot today, but let's say Shem starts a business and he's doing really good, expands and builds multiple factories and hires a bunch of college guys to drive trucks and deliver things for him, and has all the girls, in the factory slaving away, making stuff. Megan saying, "No, I have trouble in a horse barn. Don't put me around big equipment; it'll be worse." He overestimates how much he's going to sell and make, and he's just way in debt, can never pay that debt off. What does he do? All right, we have bankruptcy laws because then they get abused today because too often people declare bankruptcy, and the rules could be that you just completely walk away from your debt. All right, I don't think that's right. But the other use that's much more legitimate is it forces the people that owe him money to kind of back off, and the courts will look at how much he's in debt and come up with some plan to pay all the stuff back off. So it's to help somebody that gets in that position, not to, as it is today, where Shem could just rack up money on his credit card and get to the point where he can never pay it back off and just declare bankruptcy and walk away from it. That is immoral and wrong. We've had people do that with their college bills, which is, a little bit irritating. But anyway, the point is it's consistent throughout the United States, and Congress is the one that gets to pick them. Can we think why we wouldn't want to have, why it's good to have it consistent as opposed to each state picking their own?
So if I know the next state next door has easier bankruptcy laws, I just move from.
Yeah, it would let people cherry pick where they want to declare bankruptcy. It would have 50 different sets of rules that everybody's working with. It makes it consistent, which is, I think, very good. So it might, on kind of first look at it, I think, well, why do they pick bankruptcy? Congress declares war, and they establish uniform rules for bankruptcy. It seems not to fit. But really, it's good to have a consistent set of rules. Now, I think the rules we have are kind of stupid. But at least the Congress would be the one to fix those. So. All right, so political power. The next one, it's number 9 in the list, to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. We haven't gotten to Section 3 yet, but somebody probably already knows. What about the Supreme Court? Who gets to control that, or what happens with that? So. No, it's actually stated in the Constitution that there is a Supreme Court. It has, that's the one court that's established by the Constitution. All the rest is up to Congress to decide how much. So all of the lower courts, all of that is up to Congress. We talked about this in the balance of powers, how Congress has the ability to set up or remove federal courts. All right, this is it right here. The Chief Justice Roberts, he can't decide, we need 16 more district courts. The president can't do that and then put all of his appointees in there real quick. Congress decides it. Now, Congress, if it's run by Democrats, they could expand it and let the president fill all those slots with his appointees for life. But it is under the control of Congress. All right, and then the last one for the political powers, number 10. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the laws of nations. What do we do if we catch a pirate? What do we do if one of our citizens becomes a pirate and we catch him? All that type of stuff. You break the laws of nations. You use a hollow point bullet in combat. Do we give you a cupcake or something and say thank you for thinking? I don't know, but anyway, Congress decides those things. And again, a lot of these, the important part is that it's specifying who gets to pick this. The president can't just get mad at somebody that he captures that's a pirate and decide what to do with him. Congress decides and sets up some regulations and rules about what's going to happen, how they're going to be tried, what the penalty is, that type of thing. Now, Congress can get just mad at them and arbitrarily do something, but that's another issue. Okay, political powers. Questions there? One more section. The last part of Section 8 is general powers. There's two things that didn't fit in the list anywhere else. At least it didn't fit in the way I didn't think it fit. It's the last two phrases here in Section 8. To exercise exclusive legislation, and then the last one, to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper. So, the first one is number 17. Isn't a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of controversy about. Let's read it, and then one of you hopefully can think about why this would be the case. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever. If you think about that, that's pretty broad. Exclusive legislation in all cases, and then they throw in that extra word whatsoever, just in case all cases didn't cover it. So, completely under the control of Congress. Over such districts not exceeding 10 miles square as may, by sessions of particular states and exceptions of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States. Okay, so let's stop right there. Congress has exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over the area that becomes the seat of the government of the United States, Washington, D.C. Why is Congress given exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever? Why not let Maryland or Virginia take care of the local government? I mean, do we need Congress to be bothered with that type of thing? D.C. is an extremely dysfunctional city, and I think this gives us some insight into it. Congress runs it directly. I grew up outside D.C., I went to high school in Virginia. When I was in high school, there was a mayor called Marion Barry who got caught in a motel room with a prostitute smoking marijuana. Goes to jail. What are you saying? What's wrong with that? He's a city mayor. Goes to jail, comes back, and gets reelected. Okay, so that's the city that Congress is organized. So, what's that? Yeah. Beautiful place. Why do we want this? Not do we want that mayor. Why is it appropriate that Congress has exclusive control over wherever the government is seated? For us, the District of Columbia. Why exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever?
Is it because if we're a state government, the state government could actually have more control over the national government?
At least allow them to meddle and cause problems. Imagine if the state of Virginia didn't like what Congress was doing, and they ran the district, and they start, change the parking rules about where congressmen park, or, they just think of the havoc that could be played. And you're thinking, no one would ever do that. Yes, they would. Okay, yes, they would. Or the city government, or even just a police chief, he could even apologize for it later and just, haul off, impound all the cars of the congressman just to be mean and nasty. So you can apologize. I'm sorry, that tow company is just a miscommunication. Kind of like Hillary did yesterday. She multiple times said, I'm responsible. But every time they asked her about a particular thing, she said, oh, well, that never came to me, or these any particular thing she never was responsible for. So it doesn't matter if it's, you can apologize later for it. But it's to prevent that type of thing. And it would happen where the local government would meddle and interfere with the national government. So we would have, the local city council or the governor being able to affect the entire nation very unduly. Okay, so very appropriate. Now, don't sit here, don't think that Congress is actively picking all the rules and the things for the District of Columbia, but they have set up a system where there's a city council and there's a mayor, and that's completely up to their discretion. They could get rid of all of those and patrol the streets personally to ensure safety or something like that. It's completely up to them how that thing is run. So exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever. I'm just thinking of Nancy Pelosi patrolling the streets. That would drive all criminals away. No, please, don't make me look at her again. I confess. There's some scary members of Congress that I wouldn't want anywhere near me. Okay, let's continue the paragraph, or that power. we have their exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever, and then the second half says, and to exercise like authority, okay, same idea, over all places purchased by consent of the legislatures of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Okay, so if Congress buys some land to put a military base, Quantico in Virginia, it does have a phrase there that the state legislature has to agree to this. Congress can't just arbitrarily yank the land away from them, but the state legislature has to agree. If that's done, then that piece of land falls directly under the control of Congress. Okay? I used to live about 10 minutes from Quantico, big Marine Corps base. Once you drove onto that base, there's a whole different set of rules. The military police were patrolling for speeding. It was a whole different, the local governments had absolutely nothing to say about what went on that military base. Because of this, it falls directly under the control of Congress. This would apply to forts, military bases, any type of property that's owned directly by the national government. It falls under Congress's control. The local governments can't meddle with what's happening there. Okay, why is this a good idea? Or you could take the other side and say this is stupid, and why is it a bad idea? I don't think it's that hard if you can see why the first half was good. I think the second half also works.
You wouldn't want a local government controlling your military.
Yes, imagine if the local government in Virginia said it's illegal to shoot firearms inside their jurisdiction or something. It's a military base. They got to practice. We don't want the local governments to be able to have that type of control potentially over a military. So I think very good and appropriate. All right, so that was the first of these, what did I call them, general powers. All right, the second one, the very last phrase there, that should be exciting. You'll see kind of a dash and. We've hit the end of this list. All right. At the end of this paragraph, there's no semicolon. There's a period. All right. So at the end of this sentence, sorry. All right. The Congress shall have power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. All right. Let's stop right there. This is referred to as a necessary and proper clause. It's got a name. All of these have names, but this one is more well known because this is another place where we've seen some abuse here. All right, the basic thought I think is pretty simple. Congress has power to do whatever is necessary and proper to fulfill their responsibilities. They're supposed to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. So they can pass a law and authorize spending money and hiring people and purchasing property for this tribunal to meet in. Okay, that's the point. They can do those type of things. The founders here didn't want to have it set up to where Congress is given authority to constitute tribunals and then have people challenge them in courts. Well, it doesn't say that they can actually spend money. Or it doesn't say they can purchase property. It only says that the members of Congress can serve as judges, or it's to give them enough leeway to actually do their job and to avoid that type of nitpicking, very inappropriate nitpicking over the wording of the Constitution. Okay, does that make? I think it's pretty obvious or pretty easy to see. So, okay, this has been abused. All right, it brings up a term that's called, or the term is implied powers. Right, things like to use that tribunal example, hiring a janitor to clean the building. It's not explicitly stated anywhere that Congress has the authority to clean the court buildings. But it's one of those things that, yes, of course we need that. We need to have, I don't know, might be fun to have trash laying around. And it would match the rulings. We usually get junk rulings, and to have junk around would be appropriate. But it's to allow them to set up that type of thing and not have somebody come back and challenging them because they hired a janitor. And nowhere in Section 8 does it say they can hire a janitor. Right? That's the point. So it's kind of an implied, not kind of, it is an implied power. Now this has been abused, and everything that doesn't fit under the Commerce Clause or under the General Welfare Clause, well, it's one of those implied powers. They meant to say that, but they didn't, and that really isn't the intent. It's to do things that are needed to accomplish this list of things. That is what it's restricted to. So I have a couple other examples. They have power to lay and collect taxes. So what do we do with tax evaders? they're not explicitly given the authority to hunt down tax evaders. They have explicit authority to hunt down counterfeiters, but not tax evaders. So if they are given a responsibility to actually make sure taxes are collected and paid, it only makes sense that they have the authority to do something to people who don't pay their taxes. All right. So anyway, that type of thing is what is meant. And liberals have taken this to just mean all kinds of things that it doesn't. So, all right, questions on that part? All right, that first half of that one was the powers given to Congress. We get the same idea for the second half for the other branches. And all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. All right, the president is picked. There's regulations, and it gives us things he can do. Congress can authorize or set up some, buy a building for him to live in, and Congress can do things that are needed to allow the other branches to do their jobs as well. Okay, right, Christina? She's chasing Alice down the rabbit hole right now. Never Land. But I think she was enjoying it. She's smiling. So, okay, so the necessary and proper clause here, it's very necessary and proper, but liberals, again, have twisted this. So, if you've ever heard me say that liberals either are really, really stupid or they know what they're doing and just are lying about it, it's because of things like we just read through this last couple of days. This stuff isn't complicated, all right? But they intentionally misinterpret all of it. So either they're really stupid or they're lying, and I would love to let them pick which they want to be. So they won't pick. They would claim that we are unsophisticated and obviously don't understand all of the great wisdom that they have somehow. Just anytime you hear them talk about the Supreme Court, think of Shem and Devante, and that the Supreme Court said you're just property. Okay, I think, okay, these people aren't as smart as we think. Just property. Okay. Section 9, this was other questions. Speaking of slaves, Section 9 jumps right into it. Oh, not that they're slaves. Sorry, don't misinterpret me. All right, Section 9. Let's go on. Section 8 was powers of Congress. I don't have a real title for Section 9, but it deals with Congress. So the first one does deal with slaves. Section 9, the migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808. Okay, so it doesn't explicitly say slaves, but that's what it's aimed at. It's saying Congress isn't going to stop any state from allowing people to come in that they want to, up until 1808. After 1808, Congress could, but before 1808, they couldn't. So if Congress wanted to say left-handed blonde people aren't allowed, because there's 2 strikes. Anybody left-handed in here? Okay, but you're not blonde. Are you both? Oh, okay. Anybody both? Well, there's 2 handicaps, and we don't want... we don't want them. If Congress wanted to ban that, they could not until 1808. States could allow them to come in as they wanted, but after 1808 they could. Okay, so that's the thought here. This is aimed at slaves and directly at slaves. States could import slaves as much as they want up until 1808. After that point, Congress could ban it. January the 1st, 1808, it was banned. All right, the importation was stopped. There was still slavery, but the importation was stopped immediately. This is one of those compromises we see with the southern slave owners and the northerners who wanted to have no slavery at all, meeting someplace in the middle. Beyond that, there's a very, very important statement in here, a very, very important word used about these slaves. It's the word persons. Can we think why it's significant that they're referred to as people in the Constitution? Yeah, the Supreme Court got it wrong. Ugh, surprising. They're people, right? They're blacks from Africa or wherever are never referred to as property. All right, the Southerners describe their peculiar institutions and property rights, and they're talking about owning people. All right, that shows up nowhere in the Constitution. They're people. All right, so that is It's easy to us to look back and not especially appreciate that, but that was intentional. They're not referred to as property. It's not put in a paragraph about import taxes or something like that. People. Okay, so very good. The Constitution thinks you're a person. Now, our current government might get it wrong, but the Constitution at least says you're a person. So, okay, questions on that? I should probably look at my notes. James Madison, Fellows number 42, talking about this. It was a great point gained in favor of humanity that over a period of 20 years, may terminate forever within these states what he called an unnatural traffic, the barbarism of modern policy. Okay, the slave trade would stop. No more slaves would be brought into the country. Okay, so and that did happen. January the 1st, 1808, slaves were banned from being brought into the country. All right, the next half of that gives a little clarification or a little extra thought. But a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. So it could be a tax levied by Congress, and it gave a limit. All right, now let's get to some fun Latin phrases, and you can remember your high school courses in Latin. Anybody take Latin in high school? I'm the only weird one? Latin's more fun. If you take Latin, you never have to worry about speaking it incorrectly with other people because nobody speaks it. You never got to put in that position. You took Spanish in high school. Go ahead and talk to them. So, anyway, I did take 2 years of Latin in high school. It actually is very useful for grammar and prefixes and some of those things. But we have some Latin phrases here. I'll tell you what they mean. All right, the next paragraph here, this is section 9, paragraph 2. The privilege of writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. So this writ of habeas corpus, anybody know what it is? It's something more than, it's a privilege, because it says the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. So, that was your answer? Yes.
Isn't like the grants you like the right to try you for
doesn't involve
violation of the law or something like that?
Involves that.
Is it where they can't put you in jail without concrete evidence, without real proof?
There's got to be some proof, okay? And I've seen this explained 2 different ways. The habeas corpus is talking about body, right? Bring me the body is what it's saying. Show me the body. And I've seen some places say that it's referring to a murder trial, and if we think Devante committed murder, then the police have to show some evidence to support that before they just throw him in jail. And the evidence would be, here's the dead body. We have a murder, right? Or the other way I've seen it is, if he gets thrown in jail, the government structure has to produce his body. Have to bring him out and show we've got him in jail, and here's the reasons why. Either way, it gets to the same point, that you cannot be held in jail unless there's some reason. There's got to be reason for it. And this writ of habeas corpus, basically, if your lawyer files that, then it forces the government to produce the evidence. We're holding him in jail, and here's the reasons why. We can't just arbitrarily throw him in jail.
Is this the same thing where they deal with, when the police talk about you got the rights from being silent and stuff?
That's different. Those are, that is the creation of the court system. But no, it's not talking about this explicitly. Okay, so yeah.
So in the process of being arrested, you can demand to know why you're being arrested?
Not necessarily right then.
Okay.
It'd be more something after you're in jail, you have this right to demand why you're there. Tell me why. It's more of it'd be lawyers typically in a hearing or something. But yes. Anybody ever read The Count of Monte Cristo? One of the greatest books ever written. Not counting the Bible. So, you read it? Oh. Anybody remember when the Count, I can't think of his name, gets thrown in jail? Edmond Dantes. Every time I see Edmund Shrike, I call him Edmund Dantes. He gets thrown in jail, and he doesn't know why. And the guy in the cell next to him that did tunnel to, and that guy helps him think through his past to figure out what did he do, who did he make mad to get thrown in jail. There was no writ of habeas corpus. They just threw him in jail. Okay. Madison actually describes not having this writ of habeas corpus as the favorite and most formidable instruments of tyranny. That's in Files number 84. You might get to read that. All right, but he describes this as a favorite tool of tyrants, the ability to just take somebody and throw them in jail, never tell them why, just leave them there. Okay? If you've enjoyed all the ways here that our founding fathers have tried to prevent the government from abusing its power, you can appreciate this one. How some runaway government just being able to arbitrarily throw people in jail without any reason is a problem, okay? And it was frequently done in the past. And they're saying not here. Okay, so habeas corpus cannot be suspended unless, but...
Okay, so they can get jailed. How long does it take before the government has to let them go?
Oh, I don't know the exact answer. This writ of habeas corpus it's relatively quick. We're talking about days that you'd have to be informed, not weeks and weeks and weeks. There is a certain amount of time, I think it's 48 hours or something, it might vary from state to state, that they can hold you without any charges or anything. But what has happened historically is you would just be held. Just get arrested and they throw you in jail. And no trial, no hearing, nothing, just thrown in jail. All right. The Supreme Court messed this one up too. Is that shocking? Anyway, our courts have gone way, way overboard protecting the rights of criminals. All right? And actually they allowed a case back in '63 that some guy was arrested, tried, went through the whole trial, found guilty, punishment given. And at that point, he challenged his conviction, saying that this had never been done. This writ of habeas corpus had been ignored or violated. Never at anywhere along did he bring it up. But now all of a sudden, oh, what about my writ of habeas corpus? And the court said, oh, okay, we better undo your conviction. And they've gone way overboard protecting criminals here. So, all right, habeas corpus, questions on that? Basic idea is that you cannot be just arrested and thrown in jail without cause. You can't be arrested and thrown in jail, but they have to come up with a reason. They have to tell you the reason and let you know. So, all right, there is an exception there, unless in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. Those nasty Canadians finally invade us. And, we're in the throes of this death struggle for existence. And you can go ahead and demand your writ of habeas corpus, but they're going to ignore you. All right, so if there's some emergency, yes, but other than that, no. All right, number 3 in this thing, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. Anybody have any idea about either one of those? Ex post. You can't punish anything that used to be a post.
Yes. So you can't put someone in jail or incriminate them for a law that was made after they did what they did.
Yes. You can't make something illegal after the fact and then go back and punish them. Okay, it's ex post facto means after the fact. That's what the Latin is meaning. So, if at the point that you robbed the bank in town it wasn't illegal, and then Congress or the state government makes it illegal to rob banks, they can't go back and prosecute you. If you go rob another bank after they make it illegal, they can prosecute you for that, but not the ones before. Okay, ex post facto law, making it illegal after the fact. If you want an extra technicality there, it also includes extending the penalty for something. All right, there was a case that the courts actually decided right on. Some guy was convicted for armed robbery or some sort of crime, and then 10 years later or so, Congress passed a law that people who were convicted of that particular crime were no longer allowed to own firearms. And they applied it to him. Right? And the courts rightly ruled that that was an ex post facto law. That was not the punishment when he committed the crime. They couldn't change it afterwards. So, but the basic thought is they can't make something illegal after you do it and then punish you for it. But it also includes change in the penalties and that type of thing. So this comes up in number 78 of the Federalist Papers, Hamilton talking about this idea as well. All right, what about bill of attainder? This one, there's no Latin to fall back on to look at the root words and have a guess. Anybody have any guess? I would have no idea other than I teach this class. So, all right, bill of attainder. This is the basic thought here. It's a law that condemns a particular person or group of people, primarily to death is the thought, without any trial or anything like that. It'd be like Congress saying, we're sick of the Braiders causing problems, let's just execute them all. That'd be a bill of attainder. Because we're sick of you causing a problem. You can't even walk in the horse barn. Come on. Think of the expense she has caused our society for the medical coverage for her arm. That money could have spent on other things. So let's get rid of them all. And while we're at it, I think I should have all the money that's left. So. All right, but it's Congress just naming a particular group. It could be a group of people, Baptist or left-handed blondes or the Braiders, a particular person or groups of people or an individual, and then condemning them without any trial or anything like that. So the typical thought is usually to death, but I don't know that it's required that it be to death, but that type of thing. All right, it's a complicated issues. The courts have come up with a threefold test to see if something is a bill of attainder. All right, you're thinking, how could it get worse? Anyway, just quickly, this is what the courts have decided, kind of their litmus test to decide if a law is a bill of attainder. The first thing is it must specify people to be affected. All right. Not necessarily by name, it could be a group of people, it could be a description of people, it could be a family or a club. It must specify a group of people. Second is it must include a punishment. And then the third is it must exclude a trial. So I guess it wouldn't be an ex post facto law if we had a trial, and the only point of the trial would be to decide if she's a braider. And as long as we had a trial to determine that you're a braider, then we kill you. Then we're good. Not quite Alice in Wonderland with Christina, where we execute you and then have the trial. All right, so that's the courts have ruled that. This is, as far as I know, the last time this bill of attainder has ever been used in any court hearing at all was in '65. So it's not like we routinely have Congress passing laws trying to just execute random groups of people in our country. But anyway, so it's been a long time since it's brought up. But that's a bill of attainder. Bill of attainder, a particular group being picked out. Ex post facto law, make it illegal after the fact. So, all right, questions?